I just remember as a kid moving a lot. Like I remember moving from my mom's to my dad's, back to my mom's, to my dad's, just back and forth. I don't know how many times we move as kids. And then my mom met a gentleman in South Carolina, and the gentleman was mean to her, abusive, and abusive to me as a kid too. And there'd be many times where he would just be talking to me, and I'm 8 years old at the time, and he would just punch me out of nowhere. And he was a strong guy. He was in the Marine Corps before and lifted weights and everything else, and he was very abusive. And my mom one night, I don't know what happened, don't know everything, but we woke up in the middle of the night, and he was in a fight with her, and I remember being in the room with my sister. That's hard. There was a big fight that had broken out, and I didn't know it, but he actually unplugged all the phones and took the batteries out of the cars, unconnected them, and he beat my mom, and she barely got out of his arms and ran down the street. He had actually broken her arm. She was bruised, just, very hard to even recognize her the way that she looked then. The gentleman was arrested. My dad came down and got us, and we lived with my dad for a little bit. My mom came back to Cincinnati, and when she did, the Lord completely turned her life around, and she began teaching us the Bible and taking us to church. I'm so thankful for that, because at the time when you're a kid, I didn't always want to read my Bible. I would read my Bible because my mom made me. So I was around it, I read my Bible, I believed in God, I'd seen things that the Lord had done. I didn't really commit my life to that, so at an early age, I think in 7th grade, started doing illegal things. And this might seem simple, but I had a family member, and he would buy cartons of cigarettes, and I would take them to school and sell them just to make money or what have you. And that might seem very simple, but anything that you do on a small level will eventually become a larger problem. Like an avalanche doesn't just start off being an avalanche, it starts with something small. To make a long story short, started selling weed, and then started, hanging out in rough neighborhoods in Cincinnati, listening to hardcore rap music. And I'm not just selling weed anymore, I started selling crack and cocaine, and I'm hanging out in neighborhoods in Cincinnati that aren't good, where they're on the news for people getting killed. I've had many of my friends get killed, and many of my friends that have been in jail. I have a friend now that's in jail in Atlanta doing 23 hours a day lockdown for him and his brother robbed 2 people and killed them. These are people that I went to school with, that I know, that I hung out with. So here I am, I've got guns, had 7 different pistols, bulletproof vest, hanging out in some of the roughest neighborhoods in Cincinnati. I had almost 20-something cars, including a new motorcycle. I've been shot at before. I had a gold chain that weighed over 100 grams in it. Somebody else liked it more than I did. 4 guys with ski masks come, and they're bucking off shots at me. They ripped the chain off my neck and took money that I had. I remember one particular time where a friend that I knew had ran from 3 or 4 streets over and said, "Chris, they're coming." And task force was literally down the street, and they were coming for me. And I had some paraphernalia stuff on me that I had gotten rid of, and I had an old Impala, Chevy Impala. I got in that, and I'm about to take off and turn the corner, and as I'm turning the corner, I see task force. They're in all black with badges around their neck, and they're coming for me. And I thought I got away, but I drove, and a few miles later, they got me, and they had a lot of police cars, and there was also, like a Chrysler Sebring, cars that you wouldn't normally see police in. They were undercover, I guess. And the lead guy, his name was Officer Hell. He was the task force leader, and he was the one that talked to me, and I'm being a smart aleck because I don't have anything on me. And I remember him specifically. He was ripping my car apart and questioning me about the money that I had or what have you. He slammed me up against the car, and he said, "Mr. Sturgill, your attitude dictates everything." And so I shut my mouth and just complied with him, and that really sticks out to me. And what he said really was a life lesson for me that I didn't listen to then, but as I got older, I really understood that your attitude does dictate everything. I remember laying in bed with one of my friends, and we were listening to Biggie Smalls, and I was like, man, someday, I was like, I'm gonna get back in church and give all this stuff up, and they would just kind of laugh and chuckle and be like, yeah, Chris, whatever makes you happy, buddy. There was a time in my life where I had a girl, her name was Dana. She wasn't a girlfriend, just a very good friend. I always kid around and say she was my second mom at school. Chris, did you do your homework? Did you get your assignment done? Are you working on that book report or this, that, the other? But she was always a good influence in my life, like I said. And Dana's father had passed away. I knew that he was sick. He had health issues or what have you. And from the hospital, she called me and she said, Chris, my dad passed away. Can you come get me from the hospital? I don't want to be here right now. But she was such a good friend. I said, sure, I'll come. And it was late at night, and I went and got her, and I took her home. And on the way home, this is coming from me, a guy that's dealing drugs, a guy that is not a good person. I asked her, I said, Dana, did your dad make it right with the Lord before he passed away? And she said, yeah, my dad, he was a Christian. He accepted Jesus in his life. And she looked over at me and she said, Chris, make me a promise. She said, make me a promise that someday you'll make it right with the Lord. And it was quiet. The words that she spoke, it was almost like God himself was saying, it's time. So it was quiet. I took her, I dropped her off, and I went back to one of my buddies' house, and they're, smoking weed, getting high, and they're having fun and laughing, and I'm over in the corner trying to be normal as if, the words that she said weren't affecting me, which they were. And eventually I broke and I called her and I said, Dana, can I come over? Can you pray with me? I was like, I know I need to get right with God. I know I'm not doing right. Can you pray with me? And so I went to her house and we prayed, and I remember, basically feeling numb, like everything around me. It was a different feeling because I knew that I couldn't do the things that I was doing before, and it was a transition to say the least. I started at that time going back to church, and I had to separate myself from friends that I loved. But I began reading my Bible. I began going to church, and I remember every time that I would go to church, they would have prayer requests, and I would always say, can you please pray that I'll graduate? Because at the time I was not supposed to graduate. It was almost impossible. I had to have pretty much straight A's from that time on, and that was March of my senior year. And slowly but surely, making up assignments, going to night school and what have you, somehow by the grace of God I graduated. And there were actually people in my class that were mad, like, how did he graduate? That's not fair. Some of the people that God held back that went to school more than I did and actually paid attention and what have you. As I'm reading the Bible and as I'm, talking to the Lord and praying, I remember going back to people and even a few of my teachers and talking to them and apologizing for some of the things that I had done. And they would just look at me like I was from another planet, like I'm an alien. Chris, are you okay? Thinking that I'm kidding with them. And I'm like, no, I'm not joking. I'm serious. I got right with God, and the Lord's in my life now, and He's doing a work in my life. And many people couldn't even imagine that was true. It's almost like a dream. When you give your life to Christ, immediately everything doesn't happen. Everything doesn't change. There's different layers, slowly by little, that He takes off and that He changes you. But at the end of the day, I was the happiest man on earth. I would come to work sometimes and they'd be like, what's wrong with you? Because I would be happy, and like, unless you experience it, it's hard to explain the joy that you have and the peace. There's peace knowing that you're right with God. Money doesn't give you peace. I had chased money for many years, but money doesn't make you happy. If you get the money, all you do is you want more money. You get a car, you like it, you enjoy it for a little bit. Guess what? That new feeling of that car goes away and you want a new car. And that's why I think I had so many different cars. Partly because I liked them, but also because nothing in this life will fulfill you. So now I'm happily married for over 15 years. I have 2 wonderful children, beautiful wife. And some of the people that I tell from high school that I'm married, they laugh like, never thought that you would be married in a million years. But work in construction now, a construction supervisor for a local construction company. Now I don't live my life for myself. Before I lived my life for me and for money and what can I get, and now it's not about me, it's about other people. I love to see, even on my job, how when people increase or they get promoted, how someone that started at a lower stage will get promoted to a foreman position, or them growing and learning. I mean, that to me, that is great. I've been given more than I can ever imagine in my life, with my family and having a house and the job that I have and doing the things that I do. Sometimes I don't feel like you deserve it, but at the end of the day, we don't deserve what we have, but it's just the goodness of God for what He has given us, to say the least.